Today on the podcast, a conversation with Parm Bains. Parm is, for lack of a better word, a modern philosopher. He's a coach who has a way of untangling probably some of the stickiest, most hidden things you will run into on your journey of self-development. It's the kind of thing where if you find yourself stuck, having a hard time getting through some issue that's been keeping you from really experiencing life the way you want it, showing up to your relationship as best you can, being present as a parent might really serve you. I love this conversation. I hope you will too. Let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Parm Bains. Parm Bains, welcome to the show. It's so good to have you on, man.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, it's good to be here. Good to connect with you, and appreciate you having me on here. I know you do a lot of key work with men specifically, but with humans. So the fact that you trust me to be on here means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, so we connected doing a coaching program back in, I think it was 2023. Mm-hmm. And we were two of maybe like 10 men in a program of, I think, a cohort that was like 250 people. So I tend to notice all the other men in it, and you and I got to connect a little bit after the program and started following you on Instagram. And one of the things I love about following you on Instagram is that you're one of the few people who post things regularly that not only make me feel more spiritually connected and curious and intrigued, but also they're relevant to relationships and they're relevant to all the things that I love to talk about when it comes to growth. So just kicking it off with, you are a great follow on social media.
Oh, that's very kind. No, thank you. I think, sometimes my writing can be quite direct. It's more kind of based on truth, maybe even more than spirituality, and just how I see things. But yeah, I'm glad, if it sparks curiosity and intrigue for you, then, I appreciate the kind words. And it's ultimately about just sharing what my journey is and how I see something. But ultimately, and then eventually if something lands for someone and they get to land somewhere with it, then that's beautiful also.
Yeah. Well, it's whatever your algorithms are feeding you, it's working for me too. So thank you for all those things you share, man. And I would love to hear a little bit more about, you framed it as it's coming from this place of truth. And I do see you blending all these different spiritual traditions. I'm curious for you, what is the spiritual background you bring to your coaching work? Because it feels so infused throughout.
Yeah, it's a fair question. First of all, thank you for just acknowledging the fact that it's a blend of different traditions and it's not one specific one, because that sometimes does get lost on the sense of I share. Sometimes I'll really go into Vedanta, and I've explored that a lot. But then there's also the Zen traditions and the Sing Ching Ming and some real hardcore truths there. I was raised as a Sikh in the Sikh tradition. As I grew up, I kind of saw it more as a religion, but now very much in alignment with as it being a tradition, because for me, it's less about the methodology. It's just more about what it sparks within me. And that's, for me, it's all about the human game. That's where I've ended up on my spiritual journey, right? Because the ultimate, I know there's kind of buzzwords like enlightenment, and even freedom can become a bit of a cliche unless you look at it with a bit of sincerity. But ultimately, for me, the human game is about arriving at peace and living it as potently as we can, right? And that's what we're all searching for, whether we know it or we don't. And I did that for many, many years. And I'm sure we might get to it. Went through a journey of trauma, exploring the inner child in the program that we did. A lot of somatic stuff, a lot of emotional stuff, and mindset is probably something I explored even before that program. And it's always been there. But now it's less about mindset. It's more about the mind itself, right? Mm-hmm. And just really, really diving into the intricacies of that. Because the only reason peace isn't here is because the mind is noisy.
Yeah, that was my question for you about, I love that framing of the human game is all about coming back to peace, right? And it's so funny because such a rare objective for a game, like, oh, I'm going to go play this to go be more peaceful.
Yeah.
And yet that is, it just resonates as, yeah, that's what we're here for. We are coming back to some level of peace inside. And yet this level of game, there's something in there that rubs against it for me. Like,
Absolutely.
it doesn't feel like it in the moment that I'm coming back. I'm doing this for peace in the end, you know?
Yeah, because it's, especially if it's sport, for example, you know, like you're going full throttle, but let's use a genius that's kind of at it right now. Lionel Messi, he's
Love Messi. Yeah.
at peace on the pitch, right? I even posted a few kind of reels around it. Like, he's at peace by large. He's the most peaceful human being on that pitch, because he's at one with the game, and the game's almost tuning to him, right? Yeah. And he's not getting involved in the noise. Sometimes he will, like he missed a penalty. So interestingly, that was when he was pausing and he had a moment to be with the mind, and he ended up following it. Mm-hmm. But in the speed of the game, he sees things that he probably couldn't even articulate, which means it's not about the mind. It's just about your human calling on where you're naturally pulled. And if you're doing that, even if it requires physical effort and discipline, you'll still be at peace doing it. And like you said, peace can get very overlapped. That peace means stillness. Let's be a monk and sit in the Himalayas and not face the world. And I don't see it that way at all. I see peace as not being having a peaceful mind. It's being at peace with the mind, regardless of where it goes. Mm.
Yeah, which is it's a very difficult wisdom to attain that, because you have to sit with what is there in order to recognize that the sitting with what is there and accepting what is there is part of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally. And interestingly, because the sitting with can sometimes be almost manipulated by the mind as we do it.
Yes.
Right. So if I was to say, Dave, just be present, your focus would be on the act of being present. But that's not actually sincerely being present. Sincere presence arrives when you explore what's taken you away from it in the first place. And once that negates itself, then presence is all there is. So the being present isn't a verb, it's an occurrence. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And this is, you're like right on to exactly where I wanted to go with this. Because so often the guys I'm talking to in my work, or they're coming to a coaching session, they've been informed in some way that they have work to do on themselves, right?
Yeah.
And that coming from that approach is almost inherently inviting in this thing that you're talking about, where you say, okay, go do the work, go feel your emotions. Yeah. And it becomes this trap of like, okay, well, I'm trying to, and I don't know how. And the fact that I don't know how is making me feel like I'm crazy. And it goes on and on and on. How do you approach something like that, where a guy comes to you and, you know, he's been told, or maybe he's even just been in the work for a long time, like, I'm doing the work and nothing's changing. How do you unravel that?
Well, the first thing I would do is I would unpack the fact that you ask how, right? And I always refer to that as a trap of the mind. Through various degrees I've explored, like there's several people, and if I can mention them at the end. But if someone was to come to me and ask how, my initial question, and it happens a lot, someone will say, I feel trapped in a relationship, or my career is not doing this, or I'm procrastinating. So how do I get out of it? Right? Which in the essence is what you're speaking to.
Yeah.
I get the nature of what you said was slightly different, but I think it's very easy for the mind to latch onto that and take ownership. I'm doing this now. I'm doing the inner work. I'm exploring my emotions. I'm going to my trauma. All of this. It's all, as soon as the mind takes ownership, you've not lost it, but there won't be any real reverence in it, because you're not feeling it at the human level, right? How do I feel my emotions? Like, the emotions are already there. You don't have to do anything to bring an emotion up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's very, very human. I can even see it like in your eyes as I'm sharing it, because you can feel it, right? It's very powerful to realize. I've explored this notion probably over the last 2, 3, 4 months in more detail. But the body itself does not require the mind in order to function. It only requires the mind to survive. Right? And that in itself is a game changer for me, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't need mental activity for your body to do something with cells and replace certain cells and kill other cells and do something with the liver and do something with the kidneys. You just swallowed some water there. There's no mental activity in what's happening in your body from that swallow. But the mind will take ownership. I'm Dave, I took a sip. But that's not really what's happening. There's a hand that's feeding the body. And this isn't about spirituality. It's direct seeing of what's going on in the human experience, right?
Yeah.
It's really, really powerful if you can sit with it and just see it, that a lot of these things happen. And going back to your original point on emotions and feeling your feelings, there's no such activity as feeling your feelings. Because if you're almost robotic about sitting here, I'm going to close my eyes and I'm just going to feel what's here, you're not going to do it because your mind is focusing on the fact that you're doing it. Right?
Yeah.
And that's where the conversation for me becomes about me navigating where the person's mind is going. Right? Not out of judgment, because the nature of the mind is to be active, is to try and make it. The mind doesn't really give too much concern over context. It just wants its way, and that's its nature. We're designed to survive, but we live in the safest era that humans have ever lived. And I'm not dismissing that. Obviously, there's atrocities that go on around the world, and there's wars, and there's all kinds of horrible stuff. But by and large, as a human species, we have buildings that can withstand storms. We have food on demand. We have warm heating when we need it and the weather's really bad. Like, all of these basic survival elements are there. And yet the mind is busier than ever, trying to keep us busy and entertained. Reach for a phone, reach for a snack, reach for a substance, whatever it is. The underlying pattern that derives from it is trying to achieve the same thing, which is not to be still.
Because why is it that we are so afraid of the stillness?
For me, the fear of stillness is simply the mind presenting an argument so it can remain active because it's his nature. So if literally just being still and an emotion arises, that in itself isn't fearful. And again, I'm not condoning that anyone with severe trauma might go through something quite severe physically, right? So that's not what I'm speaking to. But just to sit here and stare at a wall for, say, 10 minutes is quite difficult in the world that's busy today, because it's something that suppressed will arise. The reason the fear is there is it's not just a narrative and it's not just a sensation. It's what occurs in between the two and what your mind makes it mean without even telling you it's making it mean that. And before you know it, you're on the pattern. You're following that pattern, and it's going to be driven by fear. Yeah.
So in my experience, a lot of guys, when they're approaching this problem of, okay, I get it. Like, I need to let what is inside arise and be with it. And they'll go and they'll sit there and nothing. Blank. And then, yes, the mind will creep in, right? But then they're like, okay, fine. I hear the mind creeping in, and right, they'll get good at this kind of like settling the mind thing. And still there's this numbness, this blankness that comes through. This was part of my journey too. And it was hard. It's really hard when that happens. Yeah. I'm trying not to ask how. What's going on there?
It's really tough, right? It's really, really tough. And obviously this is a flowing conversation. So if it comes up as a how, that's fine. We can navigate it, but I'm not just going to keep picking at how you're using the word.
No, it's a helpful reframe for me too, because I do tend to go to how when I'm meeting people who understand these dynamics in an interesting way. But what I like about the dynamic is that how is not actually as interesting as the what's happening. Like, what are we observing,
Yeah. I think what how does is ultimately it diminishes agency.
Yes.
In a human being. And actually, by our nature, human beings don't like being told what to do, even though we ask all the time. Yeah. Like, at the raw level, a child, you tell them what to do most of the time, they're not going to do it.
Yeah. No way.
And we just buy into the fear that I have to ask someone because I'm convinced I don't know how to do it. I just need an expert to give me the tools. Right. Yeah. So, and that's not to diminish tools, like depending on where someone is in their journey, if they're quite early and just simply sitting and witnessing an emotion arising might not be possible for them for many, many reasons. Right. So, yeah. But was there a question? I apologize. I interrupted, I think.
No. The question is the guy who's sitting there and he's really doing his best to get on top of the mind taking over and judging what's happening, and just sitting there and recognizing like there is just numbness.
Yeah.
Like there is a block between me and what I know is underneath.
Got it. Yeah.
What's happening there for him?
The what's happening will be organically revealed in the conversation. But an example, because you gave it beautifully, of what this human being will be experiences. My question will be, what's your buy-in for numbing?
What's your buy-in?
Yeah, for the numbness to be there. Because if you didn't have a buy-in, you wouldn't be numbing it.
So what is making the numbness serve you? Like,
yeah, we're desire-driven creatures, right? And it's the strongest desire will always win. So you're in that moment, my reflection would be, what I'm hearing is your desire not to feel is stronger than your desire to feel. So where did feeling become scary for you? Or something like that, right? Again, it's very much in flow of the conversation. It's not a script. It can't be a script.
Yeah.
All right. Yes.
Yeah. What a powerful inquiry. And I hope that serves people who are listening to this who've run into that, because it's actually pretty common, I find, among men.
Yeah.
Where, and I love the way you talk about sports too, because I think a lot of this stuff can get brought up in childhood and the ways we're taught to perform sports. It can be in school, it can be in whatever, but you push through whatever it is that's coming through to succeed, right? To perform. And that can have really powerful lasting effects. I think a lot of men in particular can resonate with, oh yeah, I had that coach who just like, I was just not allowed to be afraid of that, or I would XYZ. And the impact that comes can be long lasting. And it, in my experience, often looks like that. Okay, I just can't feel this thing. I don't know what's there. Something's happening. And for you to bring it back to memory in that way of, where did that begin for you? Yeah, I could see how that begins to unravel things.
Yeah, and it's absolutely like the inner child element to it is powerful, but it's also important to acknowledge. It's not the child that's suffering. It's you here and now. The child might be driving the seat because that's where it became embedded. But sometimes I find the mind can get quite sneaky and try and circumnavigate that. Actually, this is an old pattern. It's like, no, when are you experiencing the pattern? Well, here. But it was formed in 3 decades ago. Yeah, it was. But when are you experiencing it here? So is it an old pattern? And even that alone sometimes is like, wait, what? Like the pattern's here and now? And I was like, well, are you experiencing it? Are you not taking the action? Are you procrastinating? Well, yes, I am. Is there a parent here right now? Like could be a 40-year-old adult, right? It could be a guy that goes to the gym every day, has a successful job, has kids of his own. Like, is your parent standing there telling you you're going to get it wrong right now in the room? Like, well, no. On the end of a phone, sometimes they'll joke and say, okay, well, then you can get into that as a conversation, because parents will obviously carry these tendencies even with children as children get into adulthood, right? I can speak to that. And this isn't about judgment. I just simply see the human being, as in my mum. My dad passed 10 years ago, so I didn't get to reconcile it with him in the human form, but I did it internally, and I processed my grief as well. And all of this came from outside of the how, and just purely being with my human experience. It takes, I'm not a fan of the word practice, but keep it for brevity and context. Let's just sit with the looping practice element of it, right? It's like, because practice has an ownership. So you've got to be a bit, it's hard not to use language, right? So we've got to go somewhere with it for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. The piece on language keeps coming up, and it is so important, because language really does construct our reality. And I think it's hard to underestimate how valuable that awareness is. But the parameters is the wrong word, but what you have in place around language seems so valuable and so unique, I think, to your approach in the work. When you're considering, like the word practice, for example, I'm big on practices. I'm big on like, let's have some practical way to approach this thing that's really hard. how do you get to someone on that level of like implementation in daily life that's beyond the conversation with you? Does that make sense?
How do I do it myself, or how do I help someone else do it?
How would you help someone else with this?
So during the course of the conversation with them, I would explore their use of language. So even the numb example, I would probe into, probably spend a good chunk of time just asking them what numb means. Not the dictionary definition. What does numb mean to you as a human being, Dave?
Yeah.
Where does it live? What do you mean when the feelings aren't there? Because we're never not feeling. It's an acknowledgement of what's there, or it's a resistance to it. It's a suppression of it. So if the chest is tight, it's placing attention on something else. I can't do it. I can't cry. Like it's automatic. The suppression of crying becomes automatic, right?
Yeah.
But every human being has an internal experience of that outside of the definition of the word. So for me to simply assume, well, when they say numbness, it just means they're moving away from the feelings and just flake through it, would be to dishonor that human being, because what they're really looking for is a sincere space where they're not going to get judged. But I'm not going to hide away from the mind either. Right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think, so that for me would be to probe into the language itself that they're using. A recent example I had was someone said he couldn't get to do things, and we got to the word risk. And I said to him, I said, so what does risk mean to you? And he didn't answer the question. I asked him in different ways, 3 or 4 different times. And then I explained, I said, GC, you're not actually answering the question I asked, and I'm not telling you off. I'm just bringing your eyes to it. You're seeing to the fact that you're circumnavigating it, because you know if you get to the bottom of what risk actually means, which is normally I'm not going to be okay or something along those lines, right? If I get this wrong, I'm going to get berated for it. I'm going to get shamed for it. Or even worse, get hit, like all of these things. So and it's not about necessarily going to the story, but it's about relating to the experience at the raw level. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. And it's perfectly underlines, I think, this notion you started with about truth, because it's so easy. And this is, I think, where the practices and the how approach becomes really insidious.
Absolutely.
Because you think you're doing something, you think you understand something, because you've got this how approach, you've got these practices, you implement them, right? And it all becomes this performance. But if you're doing anything other than sitting with what is being with the experience, you're going to end up missing something, and missing like probably the root cause, the most painful, the most difficult stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. Go on. Sorry, finish your point.
No, it's just the most courageous work, I think. And I am curious too. I would love to hear your story of how you got into this coaching work and in your own healing journey, whatever you're willing to share around this.
Yeah, I got into coaching and the realm of coaching back in 2021, I think it was. I did a mastermind in 2022, and then I enrolled in Alyssa's course for the following year in the course.
Alyssa Nobriga, where we met, yeah.
Yeah, and I went to her retreat in the middle of 2022, and she did that workshop, the sales workshop, where she coached me a little, which was pretty cool. And I was in, like I was brought in. I didn't see it clearly at the time, because I think a lot of my inner work was ego-based. Like I was saying, I do the inner work and I'm vulnerable. I'm happy to be vulnerable, which I am. I have no issue with being vulnerable when it comes to my story. But what I've realized since is sometimes what I share can be insincere, because I'm sharing it for the highs of sharing, and I'm not necessarily taking into account there are other people in my life that might not be okay with the share. They may not be, but it's not for me to make that decision, right? Yeah. Especially close loved ones, like if I'm using stories or parents, and it's not about shying away from that. It's just the raw experience is always mine. You know, even in a moment where I went through an experience, say with my parent, where I felt unsafe, right? And for the reasons I've just given, I won't go into the details. Yeah. But the unsafe was my responsibility, not from a sense of judgment. Obviously, parents have a responsibility to keep a child safe. So I'm not condoning the behavior, or other adults, not even parents. But what I'm making that experience mean for me was my responsibility, was for me to own, because in truly owning that, then I can actually get to the root of, why did I create that story that I'm not safe? What was my buy-in for doing it? How did that organically become embedded as my way of being and no longer just a story where I open my eyes and I'm living in that world of, if I'm not safe, then ultimately I'm going to have to find ways to circumnavigate that with every single interaction I have out there, including with myself. Right? So
yes, what a common pattern that one is.
Yeah, it's survival is core, right, for human beings. We're here to kind of make it, for as long as we can. And there's conversations about death and the certainty of it, but it's about honoring that. And again, so as a child, you'll entertain a narrative, or I entertained, let's make it about me. I entertained a narrative because it worked. If I'm approaching things because I know I'm not going to be safe if I do X or Y, or if I speak out of turn, or I make a mess, like all of these little things that children will get told off for, then I'm going to do a lot in my power not to do that, right? So it's just, so as far as I'm concerned, it was working. But the working becomes so integrated when we're sitting here as a 30, 35, 40-year-old adult, which is, where I was at. Then I'm just running on fear. It's the only thing fueling things is fear, and I'm constantly exhausted because it's not natural to do that. It's like, the Fast and Furious movie series where they use that nitro button to get that boost in the race, right? We're running on that all the time. And then we wonder why we're sick, right? It's supposed to be used like in emergencies when you're being chased by a tiger or you're about to be robbed or something, all these things that happen to people. So then it's founded. But if I'm not getting followed by someone on Instagram, or someone puts a negative comment in a DM to me, it's for me to realize if my body's shifting in that moment is to witness it, because nature hides the solution to a problem within the problem itself. Right? It's not about finding a solution. It's about seeing what we perceive as a problem with sincerity, with clarity, slowing down, see it. Where is the sensation arising in my body as I reach for my phone? And it's not about stopping myself from picking up my phone and clicking on an app. It's watching myself do it. Only then can I ultimately realize what's actually going on, which is the point you made, right? It's like, you've got to see it in its entirety, the sensation. What is the mind making it mean? Okay, I'm feeling this in my body. I'm standing in a queue about to get a coffee, and it's like 30 seconds, but I'm picking my phone up and doing it. And the more I do that, the less I follow the mind when it pushes it. Because I see it doesn't work. And for human beings, it's all about what works and what doesn't.
Wow. Yeah. So much of this stuff I love to just sit with for a second, and even just that image of you in the coffee shop and recognizing like, oh, I'm reaching for my phone, and just watching it and seeing the effect that has and how powerful that is. It's so.
And just to repeat, it's not about not doing the thing, right? Because that becomes a mental discipline. Then, a mental discipline will never last. Like affirmations, it's not about what you say that you're powerful, it's about what the mind says back. Like, focus on that one.
Yeah. So your journey was really one of self-discovery through these workshops and through taking your coaching program. And
it was, and the root of kind of a lot of my suffering was obviously childhood elements that we all have, bullying and some kind of domestic violence as well. But my kind of pivot point was when my dad passed 10 years ago in 2016. And I was already way lost before then. I just wasn't willing to admit it to myself because I had ticked a lot of societal boxes, right? I had a family, I had kids, I had my own house, I had a nice car, decent wage, all of these things. Societal boxes were ticked, but I wasn't at peace. And I think the depth of the grief and the confusion and the fear just came because in a way, my dad, he didn't shield me from things. but the normalization of everything disappeared when he passed. I've never ever said that word before, but that's what's come to me now. Like, does that make sense? Like, it's almost like there's discomfort, but it's familiar.
Yeah.
And because we follow the mind, we'll sit in familiar discomfort rather than sit in unfamiliar comfort. Because uncertainty for the mind is like, it doesn't want to, it wants control, right? It's not going to go there. So yeah, that experience of grief was very, very deep for me. And then I went through some elements of therapy. I even kind of went abroad to Thailand to a retreat, switched my phone off, had some kind of real hard conversations with my wife about what I want, where I want to go in my life, what I want, what I don't. And, thankfully it was them. I came back, and that was my wife and my two daughters was my choice. And I've never second guessed that choice once ever since I made it, and I'm not saying everything's been smooth sailing since then, but what I've ultimately realized is it was just the absence of peace. And then I got into spirituality, and then I did the mastermind and with Peter, one of my mentors, and things just started to shift. I got on a call with like 400 people on a call, and I just put my hand up and he coached me, and I was just like, all the judgment I had about what I thought I'd done to my daughter because I was so strict on her, and now I feel so bad that I did it because the narcissistic tendencies that I grew up with, I was then expressing them until I realized. The realization wasn't the issue. The release of judgment was the issue. I couldn't let go of the past, of the mistakes I've made. It's like it's an absence of responsibility without really knowing that responsibility is absent, because again, the boxes were ticked. They're in a good school. They get everything I never had. All of these traps we have, right, trying to correct our childhood through our children. But then as I saw it, and this might sound ruthless, and there's no judgment on anyone doing this, but if everything about your children achieving something is in some way, shape, or form circumnavigating what happened in your past, then your children are merely trophies, but you'll never put them on a shelf because they're constantly changing. And again, it's a reflection I've given to myself. So it's not about judging anyone else that's watching this, but it's a very, very potent realization for a parent to own that actually human beings are free. It's not for us to suppress and control them, so that's been a key part of my journey. And maybe I would never have realized that or taken the responsibility to do the inner work if I didn't have kids and I didn't feel responsibility to be at peace around them, right? And not try to fix them. So, I mean, it's night and day now. It's, my take on parenting, if we get to it, is very different. And I'm absolutely at peace with, the human beings that are my children, for them to just go out and live their lives fully, and very minimal interference on my part. That nitro button very rarely gets pressed.
as it should be in our modern world, where we are rarely being chased in that way. Yeah.
Well, if you think about it, the example I gave earlier of like the body doesn't need the mind to function, only to survive. So you can extend that to parenting as well. Children don't need their parents to function, only to survive.
Wow.
And then you've got so much more energy to do things with your day.
and they get to unfurl according to their own wisdoms too.
And they'll fall, right? They'll fall. Every human being falls. Every human being falls. But it's about them knowing that when they fall, at least there's someone there that's not judging them or trying to change them or fix them.
Yeah, and they'll survive.
Yeah. They're covered. There's a roof over their head. There's food in the fridge.
Yeah.
And there's a loving environment where they'll be held, even if they're having a tough day.
There's a piece in what you said that it really moved me, and I'm not sure I've ever gotten here in my own framing, especially in relationships. But I think fatherhood it's probably that to the nth degree. Which is, you went to this retreat and you found your peace, and then you made your choice, right? And that choice had to come from you being at peace. There was agency available to you. There was an authenticity and an accountability and responsibility in your choice that became available to you because you had sat with what is there. Cleared is not the right word, but just owned your own experience enough to be able to make outward choices, to wield your agency in a way that was fulfilling to you and that brought you that love. And I think so many people find themselves in a situation where we've quote unquote made these choices to love someone, to be in a relationship, to have children, to work these jobs, to X, Y, Z. But if it's not coming from a place of peace, from a place of like really owning what is the life you've created, the internal world you've cultivated, those choices aren't really the same. They don't hold the same weight. And you can't really show up to them with the same level of love and presence, like what you're talking about, like what you've been able to do with your children because you got there. And so it's so beautiful to frame it in that way. And I just love that story because of that. And I there's an invitation in it too, I think, for people listening of really starting to reconcile what are the choices I've made without really choosing. And what would it look like to choose in the way that Parm's talking about, where it's coming from a place of peace. It's coming from a place of, I've sat with the alternative being true too. I've sat with not choosing this, choosing something different. Sometimes that doesn't even come online for people.
No, if your body's in a state of fight or flight, absolutely not. And once again, thank you for acknowledging that, because I'm big on the word agency, and in that moment it was about agency, but it required clarity for me to find it, right? You're spot on. The authenticity and the accountability, it doesn't come if the choice isn't made from a sense of space. Now, was I absolutely clear on everything? No, but at least I had some time to just be away from the noise of my world. I even turned like WhatsApp off as well, And my wife was beautiful with it. She was like, just get there, send me a text to say you've got there safely, and then turn your phone off if you want.
Wow, beautiful.
And it was like bizarre in a way, because this is like going back to when, I didn't even know meditation existed. I was that new to everything. I was very raw. I was very lost as a human being. So it wasn't like I was used to the work or anything like that. And, a guy gave me some meditation instructions, and I got caught in the loop of following his instructions and doing it 3 times a day. And I felt good. I did feel at peace, but eventually it falls away.
Yeah.
Right. And if I have to, I kind of like to say now, if I have to do something regularly by method, then it's not really working. Right. Because the body isn't designed by method. So for me, it's more about me being meditative by and large through the day as much as I can. And where I'm not, just explore. I don't beat myself up. But if I'm on a walk and I feel an urge to put headphones in and listen to something inspiring, I'll do that. If I don't, and I just want the Walkman in my head to go and just watch my thoughts go crazy, then I'll do that. Like it's not about kind of suppressing. It's just about seeing that human experience. But going back to the agency in that moment, absolutely. And I think that's why I feel as a parent, that space is very important for a child. It's for them to choose, not so I can say, I told you so. Often just saying nothing speaks more than like 1,000 words, Just imagine like in a moment where I was scared or you were scared as a child, and no one tried to fix you. No one tried to work out even what was going on. They could see you were breathing and you were crying, and they just sat next to you. I just imagine the power of that.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And again, this isn't about judgment about parents, and everyone's doing the best they can with the level of awareness they've got. So it's not like getting people to be different or change. The potency of relationship is just be sincere within you. And if you see where the urges to react are coming from, you'll just stop following. It's natural, because when you see something doesn't work, you just don't do it, right? You're not going to walk into the middle of a highway, because you just know walking into the middle of a highway isn't going to work out well for you. An extreme example, but like we can teach kids things like that. But my girls are like 12 and 17 now, so it's not like don't need to teach them in that realm. A lot of it things they can discover for themselves.
Yeah. What I hear also in that not saying anything piece which can be really uncomfortable because we want, we put a lot of identity on, I have the right words, and so little on, I have the right presence. Like I have the grounding and the embodied peace inside to let that silence be nourishing. That's such a rarer thing. It's a lot more potent when you allow it to be. But I think it's hard to get there, especially if, and I think this is true again for a lot of the people who might be listening to this show, that's rare. It's rare to have big emotions, big sensations come up and be around other people and just be given space to let that breathe and let that unfurl and blossom and wilt away, right? To go through a full life cycle of an emotion. We're interrupted constantly in that, intentionally and unintentionally. And it's funny, I was in a conversation with my wife recently, and we were talking about a family issue, and I was like, a lot just became unearthed all of a sudden for me. And as it did, I pointed that out. I said, well, I'm just like, I'm having a lot of feelings around this. And instantly she starts talking, like trying to make it okay again. I'm like, wait. I literally, the second you say something, I notice the feelings it's gone again, and I don't have access to it, right? It's interrupted. And the power of that silence, to offer that silence to someone, is huge. I can only imagine as a parent that, again, just becomes magnified again.
Yeah, totally. And thank you for sharing that, because it's not about judgment of like you or your wife, right? Not judging obviously you for having the feelings coming up or sharing them, or her to try and interrupt it in some way. Like the word interruption comes up a lot when I work with people, because it's all about the interruptions, because it's the mind will interrupt something and then try and navigate and control.
Yeah.
But like you said, it doesn't work, right? So you instantly heard someone speak and that shut something down.
Yeah.
It's happening automatically. It's not that you're not, like, on some level you are following a desire, but it's unconscious to you.
Yes.
And it's about knowing, like, what is it about someone speaking and feeling it, if you're open to it. But really in that moment, if all you do is just see it and you just know she's there, and again, this isn't an instruction for her to do anything. I'm just giving you a reflection, right? If you just sit there and it's like, if she's just sat there and you just feel the feeling coming up, whether you cry or you don't, and nothing is said, and that could be uncomfortable for the other person, right? But oh my God, I kid you not, there is so much power. It can heal people, like literally heal people, right? You know, you're talking about years of suppression, and all of a sudden you're in a space and it's like, wait, what? I get it a lot when I work with people, and they'll give me a story about their life, and the kind of question I'll ask, like the numbness, they're kind of like, wait, what? Like, I've just told you this happened with my boss or my partner, and you're asking me about numbness? And I was like, yeah, well, that's the word you said. Like, I'm not joining them in the outrage.
Yeah.
There's compassion's there. I hear it. I'm hearing exactly every single word that's being said. But if I join them in the outrage, then we're both sinking, right? Then I'm just circumnavigating. So it's about asking from that level. But that power in not saying something is so powerful. I've had an example come up that I had a couple of weeks ago at a live event I went to, and I'll share it if you're open to it.
Please, yeah.
There's a lady, and she's kind of done the work around mindset and stuff. So she's very self-aware, and she just said, I've realized I'm actually a very sensitive person. You know, a lot of emotions have come up, and, you know, bless her, she's been through her own experiences in life. And as she was sharing this, we were just mingling. It wasn't a coaching session. We were just speaking like over about 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. And I said to her, what comes to me is this notion that people misunderstand, that when someone says you're a sensitive person, what they're actually saying is you're expressing something emotionally and it's making me uncomfortable with what's arising within me. So now I'm just going to place a label on you. And they're not doing this consciously, methodically. They haven't read it in a book, but it's a survival mechanism on their part, and I'm not condoning the behavior. So I said, I want you to consider there's no such thing as a sensitive person. There's just a person on the other side of you that isn't willing to be present with where you're at. There's no judgment for that. But it's okay. A sensitive person doesn't exist. Because if you fully feel your emotions, then where's the sensitivity?
Hmm. Yeah.
It's a concept, right? That's all it is.
That's potent. It makes me think. I mean, so much of my understanding of what I'm doing the work for, how I come to my peace, is about being sensitive. It's about becoming a more sensitive human to the planet, to my environment.
Yeah.
But our baseline is insensitivity. Our baseline is this kind of pushing away of emotion, thought, feeling, whatever it is that's distracting from whatever the mind's telling us is important.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And to me, it's what you're saying is like, don't own the baseline of everyone else is less sensitive, because the baseline is so useless. Like it's so opposite this goal of presence and peace in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. It's like, if I want to express an emotion and I want to say something sincerely, I'll generally say it. I'm not rude. I won't raise my voice. But if I'll give you an example, and again, for the reasons I shared earlier, I won't go into the details of who it is, but like someone in my life has narcissistic tendencies, and I kind of generally say, well, they don't really ask questions, they make statements. Because if they ask a question and my answer is no, then it's like, no, but what about this? And I'll be like, no, I heard the question the first time, and I'll repeat it word for word, and my answer's still no.
Yeah.
But that would be the kind of reflection I will give. It's not rude, it's just direct. And some people might say, well, if you're direct, you're rude. No, my tone doesn't change. The cadence of my voice is at peace. Yeah. I'm at peace with my answer, right? Now, if you find something uncomfortable about my answer and you feel uncomfortable because now I'm saying no to something you want me to do, then the ownership is over there. Yep. You know? And it's about the essence, right? Like if it's a young child that's 3 years old, you wouldn't do that because there's a sense of responsibility and the safety element. There might still be an element where you have to say no to a 3-year-old child, but the energy will be different. You know, you wouldn't phrase it that way. You know, you wouldn't question them trying to make a statement and not question. You'd see the side of it and then actually say, you know what, it's quite dangerous if you do this. My reason of saying no is this. Yeah. So, but with adults, yeah, like how many times will someone say, oh, what about this? Or if this is this way, then what about this? The if tells you they've already made up their mind and they're looking for validation. You know, and I see that with clients a lot when I work with them, again, not to judge them, but I'm there to help them circumnavigate the mind and not follow it. Right? Yeah.
And it is a sneaky one. It is a very sneaky one. Yeah. There's a piece here too about when you're in an intimate relationship with someone, and this could be any kind of relationship, anyone you're really close to that you love dearly, you're entwining your life and the circumstances of your co-inhabitants, if it's that way, or just co-presence, if you're just have that kind of relationship. Maybe it's over the phone or just you see them every once in a while, but you're intertwining yourself with them, where what they're going through will come into your perception in some way, and it will affect you in some way.
Yeah.
Owning how you let it affect you is your responsibility, not their emotions, not their perception of you, not the thing you want to have happen for them. It's just owning how they affect you. And this is why I think also this sensitivity is a really nuanced thing, because over-indexing the sensitivity, which is, I think, a tendency of a lot of people, that was mine for a long time, was over-empathizing, I'd meet people 3 feet in front of me, right in front of their nose, as opposed to in my heart. Right? And learning to do that in a way that allowed me to still be my loving presence, intertwined with people that I love, without coming off as way overbearing or overly cold. When I learned that it was all about my own responsibility and learning how I want to be with people, how I want to interact, owning what's mine and not what's not. Boy, that's a tough balance to strike. But I think the map you're giving in this conversation around following what is, noticing when the mind is giving you the story that you're just assuming is the truth, and
Yeah.
where that's taking you. It's boy, that's so helpful. It's a really great trailhead, Parm.
Yeah. Thank you. And there's a little reflection I have for you, just based on what you were initially shared. If you're
Yeah,
open to it,
always open from you. Yeah,
and
yeah.
I sense you will have heard this anyway, but it'd be really good for those listening. It when you talked about the experience you have, this your sense with a relationship, or you, if all of those were changed to I, they're a bit harder to say,
Oh,
but it's
yeah,
more potent, right?
yeah.
And I know you weren't necessarily speaking about a personal experience, but if you were, the change of the language from you to I will evoke some emotion, right? It's like, whoa, okay, it's a bit harder to say. And like you said, it's almost harder to get to that balance. And for me, it's not hard to get to the balance if getting to the balance is no longer your objective. It's just exploring what's in the way of it. Then the balance itself doesn't become hard because it's not the focus of what's going on. You're just seeing. Because if it's really about the other person, and the mind likes to place blame a lot, right? If someone, say someone in your life was to trigger you, or someone in my life was to trigger me, let me own what I just said a minute ago, then when their name comes up on my phone, I haven't even interacted yet. My body's physiology is changing. So that ownership can never be outside, right? And again, I'm not condoning, I'm talking as an adult. I'm 48. I live in my own home. I pay my own mortgage. Like, I've got things covered, right? I'm not actually under threat. I don't live in a dangerous neighborhood. So in that moment when a phone rings, even if the person's 3 hours drive away and something's physiologically shifting for me, then I know where the exploration is. Doesn't mean I hang up and I don't answer. I might choose to think, actually, I can see what's going on in my body. I'll pick it up. And I'm having the conversation, and I can at the same time know what's going on internally. We can do both things, right? Multitasking is not a great option for men, as I hear as a joke, but as a human, we can do those things.
Yeah.
You know, we do multiple things. We walk and we breathe. So
Yeah.
it can be done. It's just an illusion that it can't. But it can't be done methodically. You've just got to bring attention. It's where your attention goes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that. It's interesting too, in hosting the podcast and using all these lessons that I learned in my own life as teaching tools for other people, where that you and I split happens. I could probably go back and garner some pretty interesting lessons for myself from that. So
yeah, you'd probably spot it if you watch it back for yourself, right? Because it's something I sense you'd be aware of, because it's the ego's way of circumnavigating ownership and some kind of distance from something. Because something's happening to someone else, it's a bit different to what's happening internally, right? And it's all about context.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to wrap up with just maybe one more potent piece here that I've been receiving throughout this conversation, but there's still an inquiry here for me, because it is something that I encounter a lot in my life. And these are without judgment, people who are maybe a little less interested in taking responsibility, and also dealing with a lot of intense emotions that come up from, I'm calling it relationship, and that you interpret that however you want. But the intense emotion is creating a ton of, I guess, old patterning, where anything that is not able to be seen or touched or measured with data isn't real. And so when you and I are talking about navigating your internal experience and using that as the guide, it can feel really inaccessible to someone who's really caught up in the emotion of it, really caught up in oftentimes the built up resentment that gets created by being blamed for things that doesn't feel fair to be blamed for.
Yeah.
I want to go back to how where would you direct a man who's using that, hey, I can't touch it, I can't see it, I can't measure this, how can I know it's real? How would you direct that inquiry?
I'll go with instinct, and I'll say what I'm hearing, even though you didn't use the word specifically, is your desire to control something. So what does control mean to you? That's what it is, right? I'm trying to see the emotion, grasp it, have some data on it so I can manipulate it. But the human experience isn't about manipulation. That's all mind, right?
Yeah.
Just even asking that, like, well, yeah, actually I am controlling. And control comes from fear.
Yes.
Right? I'm not safe here, so I have to somehow circumnavigate because I don't feel safety even within my body. I can relate to that. I sense you can, based on what you've shared, right, today and in other conversations. That it's unfortunately it's quite common, particularly in men, right? Like, because there's a lot of suppression, and we talked about sensitivity earlier, but a common thing might be stop being a girl. If my daughter was to hear that, she'd probably shoot me, right? So she's like, Dad, what do you mean? Like, if boys cry, they're like girls. What does that say about guilt? But anyway, I'm joking aside, that's tongue in cheek, but it's that suppression runs deep. But trying to control it won't resolve anything. It's about seeing it, right? You can't analyze it. There's no data there. There's no grasping. I would even move away from the labeling of an emotion. Depending on where I'm at in a journey with someone, right? If someone keeps bringing up the word depression, let's say, for example, I would become identified with it. It's almost becomes a trophy. Like, I've heard people say, oh, I went to the doctor the other day and he prescribed me for anxiety. And almost like, so I'm so stressed in my life. The doctor said to me, you're really, really stressed. And then stress in itself becomes a celebration. And I'm like, do you realize owning that stress itself? I mean, you'll never let go of it, because then you're losing it. And if you're losing something that shows you're working hard and you're accepted in society, you're just going to keep building more stress. Like, it's, if you really break it down. So I sense that answered your question somewhat. I don't know, we're kind of short on time, but it's about really getting into the essence of the human experience and how the mind is trying to be subtle with it and sneaky with it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today, man. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Reclaiming the Gentle Man. You can get in touch with Parm using the links in the show notes. I highly recommend giving him a follow, especially on Instagram. I just always get something from what he's posting, and especially checking out his stories too. Parm is an amazing coach, and if you'd like to work with him, I'm putting a link to his website in the show notes. Also, you'll find there my free reconnection code quiz. It's an amazing resource for you to figure out how to get underneath what's happening in your conflicts. Check it out. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe. Please leave a rating wherever you listen. I'm going to be doing some more interviews like this. So if you're enjoying them, let me know. Send me people who you think I should be talking to. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Wherever this finds you, I'm wishing you a beautiful day or night. I'll be back in a week.